Hello, my name is August Harrington, and I will be joined shortly by Brian Sanfilippo and Rachel Goodrich, and we're here to talk about millennial motivations. So, to introduce us to the topic, we'll be discussing the generations and their specific age ranges. Specifically, we'll be talking about baby boomers, Generation X, and millennials. What motivates millennials? Why, as a business, we should be monitoring the motivations of millennials. And lastly, we'd like to introduce an emerging leaders program. So to begin with generations, on this chart, you'll see 6 generations listed, starting with this greatest generation, and then the 3 generations we'll focus on: the baby boomers, Gen X, and millennials. I'd like to note that Generation Y we'll ignore because it is a combination of both Gen X and millennials. And I'd also like to note that you'll notice some overlap between generations, and that is normal. Starting with the baby boomers represent about 54% of the workforce. And this generation is largely frustrated and shocked by recent downsizings that companies have implemented. And this is because they're so used to working long term with companies. And in general, baby boomers tend to work or stay with 10 years with the company compared to millennials, which is a little over 3 years. Baby boomers are a huge base of knowledge that's hard to replace. And like I said, they tend to stay long term. Generation X represents another third of that workforce. This generation tends to be independent and focused workers. They grew up with computers and are literate in the computer world. And they prefer open-ended and sophisticated projects. And then finally, millennials. This is a relatively small portion of the workforce right now, but represent a very large portion of the future workforce. They grew up in a fast-moving, technology-driven world and are very used to sophisticated technologies. They're good multitaskers, but with that, they have very short attention spans. And now I'd like to invite Brian Sanfilippo up to talk about what motivates millennials.
All right. Thanks, August. So what I'm going to talk about is, why does this matter to you, the board? And we've broken it down into 5 different categories of what really motivates millennials. So the first one is receiving regular feedback. As independent as millennials claim to be or profess to be, they actually thrive when given constant and consistent feedback from their peers and their managers. This can be anything from open lines of communication to being pointed in the right direction on different projects in that regard. One of the things, though, that you have to be very careful about with millennials is that they absolutely cannot stand micromanagement. So if you are in their face every 5 minutes asking them, hey, have you done this? Hey, have you done this? They'll get irritated with you, their production starts to go down, and eventually they'll probably leave the company because they're so irritated with that type of work environment. Next one is encouragement. So this ties very closely in with the last one, and this goes back to that need to feel empowered that the feedback provides as well. And a simple, pat on the back or a quick email will be like, hey, you did a great job on that project, or thanks for getting that to me in a timely manner, really goes a long way with this generation. They want to see that you understand that they're working hard and be rewarded for it in some type of emotional consideration. The next one is community involvement. Millennials actually hold a higher priority on helping people in need at 21% than a high-paying career, which is only 15%. So, as we'll touch on later, creativity and community involvement of what they care about the most really helps you to motivate these individuals and to retain them, more importantly. The next is workplace flexibility. Millennials have a great sense of work and work-life balance, and it's one of their top priorities in seeking out where to work, how often to work, and this comes from a internal need of that they're not always the most efficient from an 8 to 5 standpoint. They can have ideas at 9 p.m. and they'll go on rants for 2 hours completing that. Whereas in a more traditional approach is you come to work at 8, you leave at 5, and then you leave all your work and jobs and tasks at work until you come back the next day. Millennials don't operate like this, they don't think like this, so they really need that open flexibility and that open workspace to really maximize their productivity. The last is to be creative. So, and the way that they need to be creative is that they seek out a creative environment, a open floor plan, breaks, lots of community involvement, and lots of interaction with their peers around them can help them go a long way in creating and maintaining that creative spirit that drives them. And the big ask is that the impact on our business, so why should you guys care, is because millennials are becoming a larger and larger percentage of the workforce every year. And as you can see, over the past 15 years, they've grown from around 20% to within the next 5 or so, they'll get over 40. So it's very crucial that we focus more on motivating millennials, because they will be the new board members of the future. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Rachel to bring us home.
Thanks, Brian. So if we as a company better understand our millennials, we can better leverage their skills and their performance to our performance as a company. As August mentioned earlier, millennials are starting to represent a larger and larger portion of our workforce. And while it would be costly to change the physical layout of our office, we can certainly change the way that we mentally approach how we work together. We know that millennials are high maintenance, but we also know they're high performing individuals. And if we give them something to believe in, they'll work longer, harder hours, because technology also allows that. And this is a generation that's grown up with a lot of technology in their lives. The other thing that millennials are particularly interested in that we should be giving them as a company are amenities, health and wellness activities, mentorship opportunities, educational opportunities, really anything that is going to add value to them and their life in our environment. So I think that the first thing that we want to discuss here is that millennials have an underlying desire to shape their workplace. They're very entrepreneurial, and while they are having that entrepreneurial spirit, they're also massively in debt. $37,000 is the average millennial debt load from education, which I think is very important here, because that means that we as a company can pay them less but get more out of them. They're an educated labor force, they want to be leaders within our community, and they also want to contribute. Innovation as a science. According to Deloitte's third annual millennial survey, 60% of millennials place innovation as not spontaneous, but as a scalable process, something that we as a company can really tap into, because innovation is the future. And if we don't encourage innovation and flexibility, as Brian earlier mentioned, our millennials are going to move away from us. And then last but not least, as I previously mentioned, they're interested in leadership. And just like Brian mentioned, again, we're not going to live forever. We do need board members of the future and people to keep us on track. So with that, we would like to introduce an Emerging Leaders program. So how do we pick out who we want in this program, and what attributes are going to add to our working environment? So first of all, we definitely want to recognize high academic performers, or conversely, if they're not so new out of school, we want to make sure that we are giving individuals first right to this program if they're performing well in their annual, quarterly, and monthly performance reviews. The other part that we should be focusing on in the nomination process is allow peers and superiors to nominate associates for this program, because it's going to be highly competitive. So what are we going to provide, and what are we going to get out of it? We're going to provide executive mentorship. So we allow this associate to be partnered with a seasoned executive who is also equally as interested in leading innovation in this company in a very meaningful way. And our talent is more likely to stay with us if they feel enriched and they feel that we're providing them a service. In addition, it will create a less stratified working environment to allow ideas and thoughts and processes to move more freely up and down our chain of command. Next, we want to provide enriching program content. So we want to make sure that our millennials are moving and they feel flexible. They're not just sitting in a conference room. If they're learning about something, they're going out and having hands-on experience doing it in a way that's meaningful to them. So one thing we would want to do is we want to task them with a pet project, a development within this company that they would like to see take hold and really shape the way that we do business. We'll also include informal lunch and learns. And last but not least, we'll combine with health and wellness, which really speaks to the amenities piece of this. Promotions. That's kind of our main goal. That's their main goal. If we're fostering talent, we need to make sure that we're rewarding that talent. And then allow those people the ability to mentor their peers and become a peer leader. And the key way to do that would be their key performance metrics from their annual, quarterly, monthly reviews. And then last but certainly not least, additional education opportunities. If you succeed in the program, we will help you pay for graduate school. Or perhaps you need some more technical training. But the good thing about that is first of all, we're making an investment not only in this associate, but also in ourselves. And in the meantime, because they're a little beholden to us financially, we're more likely to retain them for a number of years. And so that is our ask, and we'd really like to focus on millennials this year.